Imagine this. You're sitting across a table from someone accused of a violent crime. You're there to get the truth out of them, but that's often locked away inside them like a safe. And your job is to crack it.
Not everybody just wants to, when you hit them, I don't believe you. Very few people are like, okay, you got me. All right. I mean, you can hit people with DNA and they're still like, wasn't me.
This safe doesn't open with physical tools. Your tools are different. They're body language, tone, timing. You get it wrong and you've failed and you're done.
They are very adept at looking at your reaction. So I really have to be very, very careful about what I'm putting out into the world. I've heard the craziest things on the planet and my face doesn't change from the way it is right now.
Some people unlock easily. Others, it may feel impossible.
I have met 3 evil people in my life. There's people that literally said to me, that's how they keep their sanity, is by committing these horrific acts against children.
For 25 years, the Secret Service trusted Brad to protect presidents and to get the truth out of people who didn't want to give it away. And today, he's here to reveal the secrets of his craft.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Ordinary Monday. Thank you so much for listening or watching wherever you are. I'm your host, Chris Barron, and each week I sit down with a guest whose job is far from ordinary. We're going to explore how they got there, what it's really like behind the scenes, and then I'll ask them to relive the single most unforgettable experience of their career. Now, before we dive in, a very quick announcement. There's some fun bonus content from this week's episode, so stick around at the end to find out more about that, as well as our weekly listener story segment and a sneak peek at next week's episode. Okay, so on to this week. A quick disclaimer, this conversation includes discussions of criminal cases and situations that some listeners may find unsettling, so please take care while listening. My guest today is Brad Beeler, a retired US Secret Service special agent whose 25-year career sits at the crossroads of protection, investigation, and analyzing human behavior. What makes Brad's story so compelling isn't just the presidential motorcades or the foreign trips, it's the other side of the job. The high-stakes interrogations that hinge on a single expression. Brad's career is really a masterclass in communication, learning how to get the information you need from someone by reading subtle shifts in posture or tone, or how to make decisions that de-escalate a situation. His No Ordinary Monday story this week is a brilliant example of that. It centers on the so-called king of counterfeit, a man whose work was so precise he fooled countless people and passed off millions of dollars of counterfeit money. Brad walks us through the tricks that he used to get him to eventually confess to his crimes. You're listening to No Ordinary Monday. Let's get to the show. Brad, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Chris. Wonderful. Good weather here in South Carolina, so thanks for having me on.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I've seen you've been doing a lot of podcasts recently, and we were just talking about that recently. And what's it like being on the other side of the mic? Because I know you're usually on the interviewer side.
It's terrible. I don't have any control. I don't know what's coming out of left field here, right? Here you are over in Indonesia plotting some kind of questions to throw at me, and I'm not used to that. I'm used to the one having a little bit more control in the situation, so it's tough.
Nice. Yeah. Now you know how your interviewees are. Interviews or interrogees.
I guess we go. Interrogatees. Yes.
Interrogatees. There you go. That's a good word. So there's something I wanted to ask you just before we're going to get into stuff. Is that when I made lots of documentaries in my time, about 15 years in that business, and when I sit down and watch a documentary, I cannot help but analyze, interrogate, criticize, pull it apart, think about how they did that. And for someone like you who's done communication, has been so involved in that, body language and everything. If you're just in a normal conversation, is that always on in your brain? Like if we're talking now, are you analyzing every part of my output in terms of communication?
I would say probably not. I try to not bring it home. I think I definitely have a little bit of a dimmer switch there, because if I didn't,
Nice.
my wife would beat me, right? But yeah, I think more so with the kids, where you going, who you with, what you doing, what are the plans. I think I kick it up a notch there, but my wife will tell you that I do have a pretty good job of turning it off. I think your mind it'd be too much cognitive overload. You would go crazy if you're always looking at things that way. You have to kind of look for the best in people sometimes. And unfortunately, I've had to talk to some of the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
So I got a 14-year-old, so just started high school, and then my son is at a military academy. He's 20. So one's getting ready to get out of the nest, and the other one's still there. So
yeah, I was saying, like, that sort of teenage years. I'm sure that
yes.
that sort of interrogator's mind must be tough,
especially with the daughter. Especially with the daughter, it was. She brought her first boyfriend home to the house, and of course, I was getting ready to go to work, and I had my badge and gun on, and there's my polygraph stuff in the background. It was like Meet the Parents. I felt for the young lad when he came over there. He was very nervous, but he handled it well.
Can I ask you a question? Are you going to polygraph him if needs be? If you ask for your daughter's hand in marriage.
Yeah. I've had friends, nicely ask, "Hey, would you mind polygraphing the boyfriend, the prospective suitor? Would you mind?" Yeah. And obviously not, but I think it's just more so asking those deep questions and trying to get patterns of behavior and so on and so forth without the polygraph. But it is a nice, impressive tool to kind of have in a glass case behind you when you're talking to the boyfriend.
Nice. Yeah. You don't need to pull it out. It just needs to be there as an intimidation.
Yes.
So fantastic. Yes. So I just want to start with obviously, people jumping onto a show like this going, "Oh, great, former Secret Service agent." Mm-hmm. Everybody probably is thinking movies, sunglasses, earpiece at the, just behind the president, that kind of thing. But I was so surprised to find out that actually the job is way more sort of diverse than just, protective detail. Like, you're helping out, police forces, you're doing interrogations, you're doing, counterfeit stuff. Like, I wonder, if those are the three main buckets of kind of roles that you played within your Secret Service career, just sort of break those apart a little bit and just tell us what each one of those, how it sort of breaks down and what you got up to.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. So it's one of those things where Secret Service was founded in 1865. It was one of the last things that Abraham Lincoln actually signed into law, an agency that ultimately would have protected him. Obviously, it wasn't there at Ford's Theater, but it was set up for to stop counterfeit, because the Confederate States of America had been counterfeiting multi-millions of dollars, trying to upset. That was kind of one of their mechanisms of a war, was to try to cause massive inflation in the North. So what they did is they said, what kind of people are worthy of trust and confidence? What kind can work undercover? And in its early years, that's what it did. It worked civil rights. It worked counterfeiting. Then it took over protection in 1901 after the third U.S. president had been assassinated. And after that, it kind of had that dual role of counterfeit. It was in the Treasury Department at that time. And it wasn't until after 9/11 that they went over to Homeland Security. But we still have that dual role, because what we found is that good investigators become good protective agents and vice versa. The observation skills that you get early on in your career as you're developing, you get 7-8 years in, and then you go to a protective assignment. And it's a really good way to kind of distill a lot of those things that make for a good protective agent. And then when you come back to your career as a supervisor, you can kind of mold that next generation of agents. And also, if you're trying to do a protective career for 25 years, you would burn out. The divorce rate would be ridiculous. You just wouldn't have any work-life balance. So for me in my career, I started in Chicago, and I started in a counterfeit squad. And it was great for me to kind of cut my teeth there. And I had a great partner that was a former Chicago police officer that kind of showed me the ropes, a snot-nosed kid. He showed me the ropes, and was very helpful, keeping me safe. And then I just saw, like, wow, I really like talking to people. And I see these polygraph examiners, and they are able to work with the local community, especially on crimes against children. I want to do that. And I was blessed to get selected and did that for 17 years. And kind of in between that point, I was with former President Bush, so Bush 41. And then the last 8 years of my career, I taught interviewing and interrogation at the Federal Polygraph School. So that was kind of it. Pulled the plug, and here we are.
Amazing. And I wanted to go, I mean, obviously with the protection detail work that you did, I mean, you got to do some amazing travels all over the world. I think you like 40 countries or something like that. And there was a question, I mean, we kind of talked about this story before we start recording and stuff, but like, there's an amazing story in China that it's kind of like, all your work is about communication, and that story is kind of like communication, but there's like a language barrier on top of that.
Yeah.
I wonder if
yeah.
you just walk us through that story.
Yeah, it's 2008, and I was one of the advance agents for former President Bush, and he was over there, and his son, Bush 43, so W, was over there as well as the sitting president. But HW was the honorary captain for the Olympic team, kind of a ceremonial title, but he would give speeches, and he was over there to watch all the events, and we would go to see Michael Phelps win a gold. We would go to the opening ceremonies, all these types of things. Nice. And one of the events we were at was to go watch all the athletes practice at a university over there. And the U.S. had taken over the facility and stocked it, and that's where you could watch ping pong. That's where the weightlifters were. It was where the dream team was, okay? So the president and his son wanted to go over there, and they wanted to watch, all the athletes practicing. So you got Mike Krzyzewski and the dream team and LeBron and everybody over there. And so my eyes were blown apart during the advance of being able to see these athletes right in front of you, right? The problem is that about 10 minutes before arrival of our protectees, about 15 local police officers from Beijing showed up. And I'm sure they were given orders, make it safe. And that probably means you're going to do what you need to do to have no chance whatsoever that there's going to be an issue. Well, their view of that was, we're going to stop all the practices because we don't want, somebody to be run into the protectee. We don't want somebody to, where we couldn't control them. So they literally herded all the U.S. athletes at the front of the stairs. And we're trying to explain, no. The president, they want to watch the event, right? But here I am. I speak no Mandarin or Cantonese. I had an interpreter who was another agent who spoke very, very fluent Mandarin, and he's trying his best to try to explain to the head. And at this point now, there's pushing, there's shoving. We've got some of the athletes pushing with the police officers, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get athletes arrested. And in my earpiece, I'm hearing, hey, we're 1 minute out. What's the situation report? And I'm just like, I don't know. Right? I don't know what's going on here. And luckily, my interpreter, we just said, hey, let's empower this sergeant or lieutenant, whatever he was in their force. And we just begged and said, hey, would you mind showing us around? Would you mind leading us through? And he was able to kind of puff his chest out and peacock a little bit and get some respect. And that's what it boils down to, is you give people respect. And he was a very honorable man. I'm sure he was just giving orders that he didn't understand. And luckily, we were able to have everything go off with a hitch and avoid kind of an incident at the Olympics. So it's one of those things where communication is so important, and new technologies out there now. I mean, the new AirPods, they've got real-time translation in it. And that would have been amazing to just be able to give one of my AirPods to the counterpart and just have a conversation like that. Maybe we could have cleared it up. So technology is going to help.
God, yeah, the stakes must have been so high. You're like, president's on the way, 1 minute out, you've got a potential international situation unfolding.
I was a little stressed. Stressed. But we try not to, it's one of the things in the Secret Service that they do teach us is they're like, never let them see you sweat. You never run when you can walk. You keep that kind of, affect where you're not being bothered, because emotions are contagious. And when you show that you're concerned, it's kind of like if you're ever in turbulence on a plane and you look at the stewardess and you see the flight attendant, are they scared? Because if they're not scared, you're good to go, right? When they start getting scared, we got some problems. Okay.
Yeah. I have a little bit of flight anxiety as well. And it's exactly the technique I'm looking at. I'm looking at the people who, as I said, they fly day in, day out, and they're just sort of, it might be bumpy, and they're just sort of laughing, having a conversation as if nothing's happening. And it helps.
And of course,
massively.
they're trained to do that. They may be scared inside, but they're putting up a front.
Don't tell me that. Now I'm watching them like, oh, they're actually scared. But yeah. Well, I'd love to go back just a little bit, your origin story. What did you want to be as a kid? Did you picture yourself, as a little boy, up there with the president, being the Secret Service?
Not at all as far as that level, but I always viewed myself as like cops and robbers, like I was the cop. I had my little green machine, which I don't know if you're familiar with those. I'm dating myself a little bit, but my little plastic three-wheeler trike, whatever they were. But, they weren't very safe, lots of bumps and bruises. But I just remember my friends, we would always be doing cops and robbers stuff, and I always wanted to be the one kind of chasing them down. And then once again, dating myself, but here in the States, we had a TV show called Ships with John Baker and Poncherello, and it was basically two California highway patrolmen and they would basically solve the world's greatest crime every week. And it was one of those things where, like, that's great, right? So I did go to college for criminology, played soccer in college, and I got redshirted 1 year. And the coach was like, "Hey, if you stick around, we'll pay for your grad school." And so I went to criminology, and during that time, I interned with the Secret Service, and I was like blown away to see these men and women that were sacrificing and traveling all over the world, and we're always there for one another. It was really good camaraderie, teamwork. And as a result, I got to go to a visit where President Clinton came in and got to meet President Clinton. And I think I was more in awe, not of meeting President Clinton, all that was great, of the counter sniper team and the counter assault team and the people working presidential protection. I was just like, wow, that is great. And that's what really got me hooked. Like, I got to do this. And 3-4 years later, that's when it kind of came as an opportunity that I seized for sure.
I want to go back to something that is in your book, which is really interesting, which is kind of like, again, I think it's such a critical part of your origin story about how you really got into this sort of like the communication side of things. Because obviously protective detail is, there's a lot going on. But when you're trying to analyze, especially in interrogations, is the story of your best friend and how that kind of led into things. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was 15, and where I was at in school, I'd play soccer, and another individual played soccer named Doug, and we hit it off. We became best friends. I was the best man in his wedding. He was the best man in my wedding, and we've stayed so close since. In that he was deaf. He got a really, really bad fever when he was about 1, and it caused damage to that part of his brain, and he couldn't hear. So he religiously learned how to read lips for 3 or 4 hours a day, but I could only do so much with that. You had to be present in that conversation. I had to look at his face. He had to look at my face. The body language is what really spiced up the conversations, and he could really see when something was off. His ability to pick up kind of hidden messages I was in awe of. Like, he was the type of person that would always be like, "What's wrong?" And like, I didn't know I was putting that vibe off, but there was something wrong. He could sense those things because he had to, right? Like, he developed that ability, and that really blew me away. So I took a sign language class, and, it helped when we were playing on the same team in college. And we just continued to realize that how important being present in a conversation. And nowadays, what do? We're not present. We're looking at our phone. We're looking away, or, we've went from Shakespeare to emojis again. We've went to cave paintings, basically, with the use of emojis. We don't speak to people. And it's kind of like, if your significant other, Chris, sends you a text and says, "I'm fine." I mean, if there's no emojis on that, we're in trouble trying to decipher that, right? And even if I call my wife, that's going to help, because it's either going to be, "I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine." But I'm hearing the voice that's helping me. But if I can see her like I can see you, then I can put the music video together. It's not the words, yes. It's not the lyrics. It's not the soundtrack. It's the music video. And I need the music video. So I think that's what I really love when I talk to people on Zoom versus just a phone call, or FaceTime versus a phone call. Because you can pick up those hidden messages that you can't pick up just with someone's voice. And you definitely can't pick up through an email or through a text.
It's amazing. I just love that part of, as a 15-year-old, really wanted to connect with this person that you've struggled to connect with, and you taking the extra mile to sort of go into sign language. I mean, how did all of that experience? I know you and Doug are still friends to this day, I guess, and still talk. But how did that experience sort of feed into your skills as an interrogator? Did you think that doing all that at an early age make you a better interrogator?
No, I never knew that it would play into that, right? I think eye contact was such a big part of that. Vocal expression was such a part of that. So I would enunciate. For him to read lips, if you have a beard or a mustache, he can't read your lips. He'd have a hard time reading your lips, okay?
Wow.
So, but even if, like, for instance, if you've got a full beard, if you enunciate very good, he could read the lips much, much better. But what I found is the congruence between what you're saying and the body language that goes with it is a force multiplier. When you look at the top TED Talks, they tend to have 400, I can't remember what the number is, but 400 body language movements during 18 minutes. And they tend to be congruent. Too many people don't use body language, or their body is tight, right? Or they don't use those minimal encouragers like you're giving me right now. You're giving me that little head nod, or you're giving me that eyebrow flash when I say something that's important. And that's so great on how to further communication, to know, are you receiving my message? I think people have lost the ability to look people in the eyes, shake people in the hand, use people's first name. And we're caught up with titles, emojis, and those types of things. And it really, really hurts communication.
And so when you're going into an interrogation with, let's say someone who's accused of horrific crimes, and your job is ideally to get a confession from them or get information that might lead to the whereabouts of something to solve a case or whatever. Like, walk us through the skills and the sort of the things that are going through your head as you enter that room and looking at them and then going, okay, this is my job. I have to sort of figure this one out.
Yeah, so absolutely. So let's say you were accused of whatever crime, robbery, whatever. I view it as, how do you make good barbecue, Chris, right? You prep. I got to, I brine the meat, or I've got to rub the meat and let it sit. I've got to, put it in a base for a certain amount of time to let that infuse into the meat. I have to have the right equipment, all right, the right barbecue. I got to have the right temperature. I have to have the right timing. Good barbecue is like good communication. It's not grilling. It's not fast. It's slow, done with prep work, methodical. Okay. So if I was going to talk to you, I would really spend time looking at what you're putting out into the world. And what I mean by that is, you've been in documentaries for a long time. I'd go back and look at those documentaries. I would go back, and as a result, to promote those documentaries, you've got a social media trail. I would go on your Instagram. I would go on your tweets, and I would go back 15 years. And 25 years ago, people would put that stuff in a diary under their bed. Now we're all narcissistic. We're all looking for validation. We're all looking for followers. So we just put that out into the world. That's free. That's manna from the gods for me as far as communication. And I take it. And so now I can create the perfect social media reel for communication with you, because I've seen your likes, dislikes, swipes left, swipe rights. So I can make a targeted message to you, instead of have to ask you questions where I'm over here, over there. I know what you're biting on. If you were a fish, I know what bait to cast, because you're telling me what you like ahead of time. So I do my prep work, right? So then I'm going to set up the perfect environment. And what I mean by that is, if we were in a Catholic confessional, what makes it a great environment? It's private, it's non-judgmental, nobody knows you're there, and we're having a professional person that's providing you advice. So I'm going to create an environment that's as close to that as possible, where not a lot of people know you're there. It's homey, okay? It doesn't look like an interrogation room, and I'm not going to judge you. So if you say a bad thing, that you did a bad thing, I'm not going to be like, really? Like a priest would never be like, what? You did what? Right? So I would definitely not provide any judgment. I've heard the craziest things on the planet, and my face doesn't change from the way it is right now. I just kind of agree with them. And what we would do then is, after we create the great environment, I'd have a great first impression with you. I would want you to put a halo upon me. Okay. And what I mean by that is, I would want a great handshake. I'd put antiperspirant on my hands. I would warm my hands up before I meet you. And I would give you a great 45-degree angle right above your navel, handshake that is not a shake, but a hold, that's brief, with eye contact. And when I do that, your oxytocin, your dopamine is going to be fired. Your cortisol is going to go down, because this is a significant life event for you. And you are going to impart upon me. I'm going to ventrally front. What I mean by doing is, I'm going to expose my sensitive areas of my body. Imagine a dog, when it's comfortable with you, it rolls over and shows you its belly. That's basically what I'm going to do. I'm not going to blade my body. I'm going to give you a little eyebrow flash. I'm going to kick over my neck to the side to expose my carotid and jugular. And as a result, those are friend signs, right? I'm also going to have a slightly deeper tone, because you've been programmed over 1 million years that if you hear a higher pitched voice, you're going to associate that with danger. So I'm going to work on that. And the other, Dale Carnegie quote is, be the most interested person in the room to be the most interesting person in the room. So when I'm first talking to you, it's going to be 90% you, Chris. And I'm going to let you be the dog off the leash that's just taking me on a nice walk. All right. And that's going to, once again, make you feel more comfortable. I'm going to ask about family, education, employment, and I'm going to spend a hell of a lot of time asking about leisure activities, because you spend 100 hours a week doing things that you choose, that you enjoy. So I want to know about that. So let's do that, Chris. All right. So what do you like to do in your free time?
I like rock climbing.
Wow. Wow. That really, I mean, are you, is this like, I mean, how tall are we going here? I'm scared of heights, so I applaud that. But how high are we getting here?
Well, it depends if we're inside or outside climbing, but outside climbing, 20 meters.
Okay. So, I mean, are you free climbing this, or are you all like rappel? You got a rope on and everything?
I got ropes, man. It depends if I'm
Okay.
doing, like deep water solo, then we're over water, so we can fall in the water. But
Oh, okay.
if we're on a
So it's
high
somewhat
rope,
safer.
then we'll go on ropes. Yeah, it's somewhat
Okay.
safer. Still
Now,
hurts
is
if
this,
you don't fall right.
are you doing this all over the world during your travels?
Yeah, all over the world.
Okay. All right. What was your favorite face that you did, or if that's what they call it, rock face or whatever? What was your favorite place to do it at?
I'll probably say Railay Beach in Thailand.
Okay. Was it beautiful surroundings, I assume?
Stunning. You just imagine archipelago, islands, karst landscape, beautiful.
So what about rock climbing brings you joy?
I love it because where it puts your mental state. You're forced to go into, all of your mental focus is on the task at hand. So it makes everything else push out of the way and you're kind of in the zone.
Love it. So the point I was trying to get there, Chris, is a couple things, right? Those last two questions, when I asked you what your favorite was, you went back into history. You weren't thinking about the moment. You weren't thinking about, oh my gosh, they're going to ask me this question if I did that thing, right? You were going back to a time that was one of your favorite times. It was beautiful. I saw your eyes light up, dopamine, oxytocin, no serotonin, no cortisol whatsoever. And who are you associating that good feeling with? I'm the only other person in that conversation, right? So I start to get a little halo above my head, right? But the other important part was the last part you said, where I said, what is it about? And you said, you have to be 100% completely focused. And when you're 100% completely focused on something, everything else is in the background. All right. And what it does is all the other stresses and strains that is going on in life are in the background, right? Static. I don't know what rock climbing's like, but I like to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And why do I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Because of static in my life, and I have to be 100% focused, or else somebody's going to choke me out or do bad things to me. So the underside of the iceberg of why you rock climb is the underside of the iceberg of why I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So two people that have very little in common are doing some purpose, something for the same purpose. And I don't care if you're a child molester, rapist, robber, murderer, whatever, I can talk to you about that. You light up. And where that came from me was in grad school, I worked on a project called drug use forecasting. And we'd go to the St. Louis City lockup and I'd give you a Snickers bar and a Mountain Dew to talk to me. And I got paid by the hour. It was a really good paying job because nobody wanted to do it. And I was like, this is great. I'm a small town kid. I'm talking to a guy that's in there for murder or whatever. And I would be talking to a pimp and I'd be like, hey man, how do you get more money? What makes a good pimp and a bad pimp? Somebody there for crack, I'd be like, how do you make crack? Somebody there for meth, how do you make methamphetamines? Oh, okay, you get a 2-liter bottle and some matchsticks and some Coleman fuel. And then oh, okay, well, man, could that blow up? And like, they're teaching you. And when people teach you, they connect with you, right? And plus, that's something that's now always in my brain. And when I do talk to somebody that's in the similar role, I now come across like I'm knowledgeable. And the problem that we have is too many times, let's say we're on a plane, Chris, and I ask you, what do you do in your free time? And you say rock climbing. What do I do? Oh, me too. I rock climb, right? And then I just stole any dopamine hit that you were going to get. And now we're in this back and forth, and I see it all the time. It doesn't matter if it's running. I did this marathon. Oh yeah, I did it too. Or I did a Ironman. And you get caught in this me too, instead of let people bathe in their own dopamine and experience. Like, let's say I was a rock climber and I'm asking you these questions and I'm asking you educated follow-ups. Then you would say, man, do you climb? I'd be like, yeah, man, I've been doing it for a while. It's awesome, isn't it? Now that we got the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
You got the dopamine hit. I don't come off as a know-it-all. And now you're going to start asking me questions. So be curious, tactical empathy, those types of things are so important, especially when you first meet people, for sure.
It is, honestly, because I was, all the different things, people would just go into interrogation and people might think, oh, you're just there to, get the confession or whatever, but the level of just all the little things that you have to do. And I was like, you know, the book, there was like, you got the volunteer in the police station to come up and give you a hug before,
Yeah.
you're standing next to the person you're about to interrogate. And you get someone to come up and give you a hug, say, oh, you know, you're such a great guy. Thanks for doing this. And just like those little psychological tricks.
Yeah, there's, you know, and you know, some of it's Cialdini, influence principles. And the thing is, I'm always careful about, you know, the word interrogation has such a negative connotation to it. And rightfully so, because it's been misused. I mean, there's false confessions out there. So I always like to say, Chris, that I'm always there to get the truth. And many, many people I talk to are truthful. And they had nothing to do with what they were accused of. And that's the greatest day that I have when somebody's accused of something. I can come in and I can provide them an opportunity to be honest, and we can prove that out. But yeah, there are times where I want to set the stage and I want to prime an environment as best I can so that that person sees me with that halo. And in this situation you're talking about, it was somebody that was very anti-law enforcement. And I didn't know if this individual had committed the murder or not, but by having the dispatcher come in and give me a hug and say, hey, Brad, thanks for letting me get that off my chest. But the individual that I was about to talk to saw this happen. So whether he was guilty or innocent, he's going to view me as a good person. And as a result, that priming is very effective. And we'll do that a lot of times where if I get you something to drink, if I get you something to eat, if I offer you the bathroom, one, that's what friends do. When you go over to a friend's house, what do? Can I get you something to eat? Can I get you something to drink? Too many people think this good cop, bad cop. No, I'm good cop, great cop. I want to be your buddy. That's the reference I use, right? You know, in the book we talk about you blame other people for those actions. You understand the motivations for why they did it. You diminish the impact, not the culpability. You demonstrate tactical empathy through telling stories, and you focus on the why and not the what. You be their buddy, and you can almost do that in any situation. You hate the sin, but you love the sinner. I truly feel like a lot of times people say to me, man, you should be a priest. You should be a counselor. These are bad guys that just admitted to something, and they're respectful because a lot of people know they did that bad thing and they truly want to get it off their chest. And all I'm doing is just being the person that's allowing them to do that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's this, like, even going through the book again, like, it's just almost the stakes sometimes. And the metaphor that I had in my mind is like you go into a room and sitting across from you is the person you're going to be interviewing, interrogating, and it's almost like when I was reading, I was like, there's almost like a safe, like a really complicated safe, and you've got to use all these really delicate little, very careful maneuvers, and if you get it wrong, the permanent bolt shuts in, and then that's it, closed. Yep. Like you're not getting anything from that person ever again. You might as well give up. Yeah. And there's even situations with your colleagues where that happened.
Yeah, and that happens where you show a sour face to somebody when they start making a disclosure. I had a child molester that, he made one horrific disclosure. And I just took the mask off for a second and I just furrowed my brow. And you have to understand the child molesters, if you're talking true pedophilia, individuals that are drawn to prepubescent boys or girls, these individuals are masters at controlling an environment, at grooming a situation, at grooming a person. And so they are very adept at looking at your reaction. So I really have to be very, very careful about what I'm putting out into the world. So many people focus on body language as, oh, what's Chris doing right now? Is it deception? Is it this? Is he comfortable? They don't realize what they're injecting into the equation with their body language. So I have to be very, very positive in my body language so it's not viewed as me being an adversary.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously on this show, we love to ask guests to come on and share just one of the most significant standout stories of their career that really sort of sticks in their mind as something significant. So we talked a little bit about before, but I wonder if you wouldn't mind sort of giving us the context of that story and how it played out. Yeah.
So basically, first case on the job, 1999, I'm in the Counterfeit squad, and I get this case handed down by my supervisor saying, hey, we're kind of getting hit with these notes. They're a little unique in that they're kind of glued together, which you think counterfeit, glued together. Well, what this counterfeiter was doing was operating on kind of shortcut heuristics that humans have, right? We try to make our ability to do things, we try to have little mental shortcuts. And what this counterfeiter was doing is he realized with the big head bills, the 1996 bills, he realized that, hey, what do people do? They hold them up to see if there is a watermark, to see if the head watermark is there. And they look at the color shifting ink and they see if the counterfeit pen works, if it notates on it. And he was able to kind of reverse engineer the bill and be like, wow, if I don't have to have the best quality bill, if I can just account for those three kind of mental shortcuts. And that's kind of what he did. Is it was one of these things where, we're looking at the paper, we're trying to figure it out. It looks almost like yellow page paper type thing, which is a little bit thinner than U.S. currency. And U.S. currency is 75% cotton, 25% linen. The way it's printed, the black ink is laid on top. It's called intelligo printing, and the green is actually driven into the note, and it's called typographic. So we've got all these things working where you've got the people that make the paper that has the watermark in it. It's got color shifting ink. It's got, UV features on it, and then other features we can't discuss. But he really, I don't want to say he was ahead of his time, but he just understood human behavior. And when he would pass, when you'd interview the tellers, they would say, he would always use different serial numbers. He would engage them in conversation. So he'd kind of take their attention span off of it. He would build rapport with them. And what he would do is he would never do it around the Chicago area. He would do it up the interstate, and then he would move towards Chicago. So you're always pretty smart to not, where you lay your head, you're not engaging in those type of activities. So for about a year and a half, I don't know, we probably had $500,000-$600,000 in passes associated with what we believed to be his note. And we just never caught him. All I knew is I knew his name was Art. That's all I knew, right? I had a basic description, and anybody that had worked with him would basically say, wow, he's a very meticulous individual. He's a very proud individual. He thinks that his counterfeit is truly like art. And so that's all I really knew about him. So I didn't know how I was going to use that. But one random night, I think it was December 2002-ish, roughly, 2001, he got picked up at a local hotel in Chicago. And the duty agent got the phone call, and he ran the serial numbers, and he realized, oh, shoot, that's Brad's case. He gave me a call at home, and I drove there, and he was in the near north side of Chicago being held in custody there with his a relative of his. So I'm like, man, I'm a snot-nosed kid. This is a big-time counterfeiter. How am I going to kind of, get this guy to like me? And I wanted to play to the ego. So what I did is instead of actually I think I drove in my K car, my Plymouth K car from 1989, whatever it was, beat up car. I told him I flew in on the Gulfstream and that this was priority number one for the Secret Service and some of the best counterfeit I'd ever seen. And you could just kind of see, kind of sat up a little bit, and
Yeah.
I wanted to have him teach me, how's it done? Man, this is fascinating. You're the first person to do this. And, it worked. He told us everything. And it seemed like we had the case put down, but there was a little bit of a legal issue with how the local police department took him into custody there at the hotel. So he got released. And he immediately went to Alaska. And here's where the kind of sad part of the story kicks in is counterfeiters in general are very hard to stop their own. They're always looking for that next high. They're always looking for better counterfeit. They want to make the perfect counterfeit. So their recidivism rate is extremely high. And this is what happened. I mean, he got off on a technicality and he goes to Alaska. He meets his dad, and it's kind of sad because he had been separated from his dad a little bit. And they start hanging out, and the dad gets involved in the family business and is passing some counterfeit money and gets arrested by our agents, Secret Service agents in Alaska. And his dad actually agrees to participate against his son. And so you can imagine being without your son, you're being out without your father for years, and then you go to meet him and then he snitches on you. And he got several years, I think 3 years. And I just remember him telling me when I interrogated him the first time that, I'm going to get a book deal and I'm going to famous and I'm going to get a movie. And we're like, okay, all right, sure. Well, evidently he wrote the book while he was in jail, and he submitted the manuscripts, and it got picked up right as he got out. It got picked up by Rolling Stone, and Jason Kirsten was the author of it, who ultimately authored the 2 books. But he wrote this, I don't know, 8 or 9 page spread in Rolling Stone magazine with his face on a $100 bill. And the reason I knew about it was a buddy called me and said, "You've got to go to Union Station Bookstore and you've got to go get the Rolling Stone." And I did, and there I was, and I opened it up, and there's Art's face, Arthur Williams Jr.'s face on a $100 bill. And I was like, oh, man. And of course, in the article, he said, "I didn't confess to those agents." And I'm like, man, you don't even give me credit. But they coined him the king of counterfeit. And knowing counterfeiters and the recidivism rate, we're like, dude, he's not stopping. So we went back to the field office, and we immediately will talk to the custodian, the evidence custodian that takes all our counterfeit in, and there his notes were back. And basically what he was doing is he was taking and without getting into too many specifics, he was taking a kind of paper that he was getting donated, saying he was a teacher, and he was using that, and he was putting certain things on the paper that tried to foil the counterfeit detection pen. He was using tracing paper to put the watermark. He was using automobile color shifting ink that was different than U.S. shifting ink, but people have these mental shortcuts, and then he was gluing it together. And he was back at it doing it again because it had worked before. So we set back on him. We started working, getting informants, doing buys and stuff like that. And our counter surveillance team was watching him one day, and they see his son, I think he was 15 at the time, run out of the apartment that they were living in, and he had, I think, $10,000 of counterfeit, and a Chicago police car was coming by, and he literally ran up and threw $10,000 of counterfeit on the hood of the car.
Oh, man.
It was a very poor choice, right? Very, very poor choice. So obviously they, and our people came out of roll and went and did a consent search on the house and found everything. And Art was there, and his son was there, Art Jr., and or Art the Third, I believe. And it was one of those things where I got to buy myself some time now because, once again, I got to play to the ego. So I told him I flew in on the next model up, Gulfstream, the Gulfstream 5 or whatever was the latest model. So I waited a couple hours, and I interrogated the son, and the son snitched on his dad, which was heartbreaking, I think, for Art as well, because within the space of 2 or 3 years, now he's got his father, now he's got his son, both snitching on him. And to his credit, both times he took it. He took it like a champ. He didn't point fingers at anybody else. He took full responsibility. So for that, I give him major props. And he admitted in his statement to doing about $8 million, whether that's the truth or not. That's what he admitted to. But one of the things that really, I think, got him to feel comfortable again is I brought down the magazine, the Rolling Stone magazine, and I asked him, I played fanboy, and I said, "Would you mind autographing this for me?" And he did, and I still have it. He's, to Brad, the greatest Secret Service agent, you got me, Arthur Williams Jr. And then he signed his confession, and it's one of those things where you kind of got to think outside the box sometimes, but I did respect him because he's one of those individuals that, one, he took it like a champ. He was respectful. He didn't throw his family under the bus when he could have, even though that did happen to him. And he's one of those people where if life circumstance would have been different, if he'd have been in a different environment growing up, he probably would have been a very successful at whatever. And the reason I can say that is because he got 8 years in federal prison. His son ultimately got arrested by the Secret Service again, and they were actually roommates in the same jail in Arkansas. And the federal system is a little bit better, I think, in providing services and opportunities for inmates to, get another skill. And he took up painting, and now he's a world famous painter. And he's since reached out to me to try to connect. And, I've definitely had conversations with him just because I respect, what he's done. Is he's an excellent artist now. So people can change, which is very rare. Usually, especially when we get up into our mid to late 20s, it's very, very hard for people to change. Usually they stay consistent. So I respected that. And, the fact that he's an artist, he's got 2 books written after him, and interesting individual.
I mean, what was that feeling? I mean, it could be either Arthur Williams Jr. or anyone that they have that moment where they crack and go, okay, I did it. I'll sign the confession. Like, what do you feel when that happens?
I mean, it's a small victory, I'm not going to lie, but I think it habituates a little bit over time. I think the first couple of times that those types of things happened, I mean, you were like, wow, like, yes. And then you almost have to create that as an expectation for yourself, because if you don't, you raise the bar on yourself and you almost create it as that's my goal, that's my expectation. And if I don't get it, I'm pissed off. But once again, I think some of my greatest times on this job were vindicating, individuals that had been either falsely accused or, it was just kind of a 50-50 shot as far as, let's say a child had died and it could have been the mom or it could have been the dad that did it. I mean, if you vindicate one, it's probably going to mean that the other person did it. So to me, I think I got more out of that, honestly.
But like, just an counter to that, people like psychopaths, sociopaths, obviously they are very much people too. But when you must have come across people like that before when you're interrogating.
Yeah.
And you approach that whole situation differently or just the same way?
Yeah, it's slightly different. I mean, it's very hard. You see a lot of TikTok videos on people that are like, this is how you tell a narcissist. This is how you tell a psychopath. Man, it's very difficult. I mean, you need a clinical psychologist, multiple interactions. A lot of people are just looking for clicks to say, look for this, look for that. And I think it's very dangerous to say that you can. It's just like what we did with the 2 truths and a lie. You're as wrong as much as you are right a lot of times in these types of situations. But I have met 3 evil people in my life. When I say evil, I mean, it wasn't situational factors. It wasn't upbringing. It was, they're evil. And if they have an opportunity to offend, they will offend. And one in particular, I remember him admitting at the age of 15, he committed a rape on a jogger in his neighborhood. And he's sitting on the front stoop of his porch and he describes it. This jogger's just running by. And within an instant, light bulb clicks, boom, he's off like that cheetah you talked about. And it's just an on-off. There's no off switch for him. And there's 3 people that I talk to that are like that. There's most offenders that I talk to are situational offenders where, the cloud storm's the perfect storm. They may have higher propensity than other people, but anybody's capable of committing crime. You have good people that make mistakes. You have good people that go bad. There's very few truly evil people out there, but unfortunately I've talked to some, and you do treat them differently.
Wow. You've still got to keep that mask on, the whole time.
Yeah,
as you said before,
absolutely.
It must be hard, so much harder because, you could, as someone's a good person who did something bad, you can keep the mask on a lot easier than someone who just looks at you and goes, no, I enjoy what I do. That's a different story.
No, there's people that literally said to me, that's how they keep their sanity is by committing these horrific acts against children. That they would go insane if they did not do this. And I can't get too much into it as far as the things they said, because it's probably not, people don't need to hear that. But for me, it would cause issues, because if I had a bad case like that, the next case I would be a little shorter. Because I'd still have some of that pent up, disturbed feeling. So I had some great PhDs that would help us. We would have counseling sessions where we talk to people about how to get coping mechanisms for this, so we could come into the next case and not have it be this this trauma. A lot of times in the child sexual abuse material, I'd never had to view it, but a lot of people in this space really have to get counseling because you can't unsee an image and you can't unhear a confession about some of this stuff. So what I would do is I'd wear the same shirt on every operation, and kind of like a medical examiner would do is when they're done doing that medical exam or that autopsy, they would, leave their uniform there so they wouldn't take it home. So for me, I would leave it in the car, and then the next day I'd come out and I'd launder it. I'd play a video game in the driveway when I got home to disassociate. So when I would cross that threshold, right, I would never write my reports at home. So really trying to keep that work-life balance so that you wouldn't bring it, back to the house, to the relationship.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the level of trauma that some of your colleagues have had to go through. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess in saying about these kind of different people, good, bad, I mean, this might be a big question, but at the end of your career, I mean, you're still working. I know you're retired from the Secret Service, but you're still working. But what have you learned about humanity? from all your time doing interrogations and dealing with people, even in protective services, and have you learned? Do you think you've learned much more than maybe another career?
Yeah, I think we definitely, discussed it earlier, is that for me, being and I say we're an apolitical organization, we all have our own thought process, right? But I would say that the Secret Service really showed me how quickly people can change their opinions. And what I mean by that is you will see it. Like, so I was, let's say, moderate to little liberal coming out of college. And I get my first job and, here with the Secret Service, and first big real job, career job. And within a year, I got assigned to the Bush candidacy when he was running as governor. And obviously he was a Republican. And when you hear the same stump speech 4 times a day for 3 weeks, and then you take 3 weeks off, and then you come back and you hear the same speech 4 weeks on, 4 weeks on, and you're around like-minded people and you're around the crowd, and they'd hear these messages, and you'd be amazed. You're like, oh, I'm a Republican now. And vice versa. You'd see people that were on the other candidate that would be conservative, and they'd be like, so people are malleable based upon their surroundings. And so it's amazing how those echo chambers, and it talks about how things are today, is that on a campaign, you're in an echo chamber. And the other thing that it taught me is that there's just some really, really good people that, it's crazy to think, like, Bush 41 was a war hero. He jumped out of a plane against his will at 20 years old, shot down over Chichijima, and just was fortunate enough to land a few hundred meters away from the USS Finback that was able to pick him up. He goes on, successful businessman, CIA director, head of the RNC, vice president, president, just a true hero. And he was somebody that was, once again, he was political to a point, but he would do things that, when he said no new taxes, that hurt him obviously politically when he went against that. But the way he viewed it was, I was making a good deal for the American people. You will never see that very much anymore. Is that, even then, he went across the aisle and worked with Clinton for tsunami relief, and they became very good friends. And the temperature in this country now is you just don't see a lot of that, people reaching across the aisle, especially here now. You see this in with the government shutdown, is just when you're in an echo chamber on both sides, that's the only, where do you look for your information? You look for it from the people that have like-minded views. Yeah. It's very rare do we get information from the other side. So what I've tried to take from all that, if I can bring it full circle, is I found that I try to look at the other person's perspective, because they did that bad thing, okay, because they thought it was in their best interest. And if I look at it from my perspective and think that's crazy, you're a horrible person, we're never going to connect, just like both political parties aren't. So it's really taught me to kind of be center, to look at both sides, to try to, I get all my news from, various news feeds that are completely non-biased, so that I can make up my own opinion and I can have the facts to talk to either side. So that's probably what I've learned, is being around Israelis, being around Iranians, being around people in Bangladesh, all over the world, is people are people. There's good people on both sides. And be very careful about putting horns and halos on people too quickly.
It's a skill that I've learned in my career as well, is to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Having it's that difference between empathy and sympathy in some cases, right? It's kind of
Yes. There's a lot of sympathy out there. Very few people have tactical empathy, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of final question, for anyone that wants to follow in your footsteps, either, to get into the Secret Service, or maybe for our international listeners to get into, law enforcement or interrogation, what kind of advice have you got for them?
Yeah. So, we long-term and short-term. So short-term, the Secret Service is hiring a lot of people right now, a lot of good people. After a lot of people like me got hired early 2000s, and we got old and we retired. And so they obviously need some new blood, and they're expanding significantly, and they've got a lot of great incentives. So I'm not here, I'm no longer with Secret Service. I'm not here to be their recruiter, but secretservice.gov, they're hiring a lot of people right now. So I would really like it to be left in good hands with some really motivated people. Saying that, be honest on your application forms when you apply, because you're going to have to take a polygraph. And we can talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly about polygraph, but everything comes down to you being honest on that application. So they have a whole person concept. We understand there's not perfect people, but we just need you to be perfectly honest. If you do that, you're going to be in good hands, no doubt. So it was a great ride, and I love the organization, and I want it to be left in good hands. So if there's people out there that are interested in it, do that. As far as the long-term goals there, I would say they take people from all, not just walks of life, but they take people from all different backgrounds. So just because you're got a bit or business major, you're into accounting, don't just get criminal justice because that you're pigeonholing yourself potentially. So just in case you're not a criminal justice major, realize we hire people from all different college degrees. So military, law enforcement, and people that have done neither one of those. So that would be I guess, my answer as far as getting into the organization.
That's fascinating. I assumed you'd have to be in law enforcement, military, some kind of aspect, but it's fascinating to know that they would take a business major grad and that
100%.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, it's a 6-month training academy, and sometimes by not being in law enforcement, you bring different perspectives. You may have skill sets that if you're an accountant, like a lot of our cases are financial crime cases, or that attention to detail may be very effective on a protective advance. So sometimes just being a police officer or being in the military, yeah, those are great, unbelievable tools, and historically it's served us very, very well. But I think our training academy does a great job of it, training people up that maybe don't have that skill set.
And you did mention, we haven't actually in this conversation talked about polygraph much, but you mentioned it just there. And I guess there is a stigma, and you probably always have to deal with it in interviews, that polygraphs are not perfect. And I said, if you're going to go in and join the Secret Service, you're going to have to take a polygraph. I'm guessing someone who uses it as a tool regularly, can you say it's reliable? How reliable is it?
Yeah, so I like to view it like this because, Chris, usually when I travel, if I travel at work, if I'm traveling armed from one place to the other, I have to check in with the pilot, and we'll be chatting real quick, and the pilot will be, where are you going? What are you doing? I'm going to do some polygraphs and such. Polygraph. Man, I heard those things don't work, and I heard you could beat them. And so I handled it a couple different ways. I said, well, magnetometers aren't perfect either, but there's 300 people about to get on this plane as a result of going through a magnetometer. And what happens? People either don't go through the magnetometer or they don't bring something through because they're afraid it's going to catch them. It's the same thing with polygraph. It's not perfect, but it catches a lot of things. It's the best tool that we have. It's the best mousetrap we have. And it does keep a lot of people from applying for fear of they're going to catch me doing that thing. And as far as beating it, the way I like to say it is, I'll tell the pilot, hey, could you fly a 727 if you just read the manual? And they're like, it'd be very difficult. I said, 1,000-page manual? Yeah, that's about right. I said, so people go online and they go down a rabbit hole and they read all this stuff about polygraph. And they're like, okay, do this, do that, whatever the case may be. Do you think we don't read that too? And would an organization like FBI, CIA, Secret Service, if the instrument was that easy to beat, as they say online, would we still use that instrument? Meaning, if the magnetometer didn't work, would TSA use it? No, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I say, look, okay, so you think you know how you can beat the polygraph. I asked the pilot, I said, okay, they've read the manual. You think you know how you can fly the plane. But let's say we covered up the windows. And let's say we took the instrument panel and everything went black. Now fly the plane. What would be the problem? Well, I don't know much how rudder to use, and I don't know what to steer, and I don't know about the flaps. So you'd crash the plane, right? Yeah. Because you don't know what I see, and you don't know how much inputs or not inputs for whatever you're doing is affecting you. And we know what normal physiology is, and we know what normal physiology isn't because we do this every day. If you take your car into a mechanic, he probably knows what's going on under the hood. We know what's going on under the hood. You don't. So my best advice, get a good night's sleep, be honest on your application forms, eat a good breakfast, come in, bare your soul, and chances are you're going to pass your polygraph. Many, more people try to do things that affect the outcome of the examination, get caught, than people that would have been a false positive. And I can scream it from the mountaintops, and people just say, you're just a cheerleader. You're a polygraph acolyte. You're just saying those things because you're a polygraph examiner. I'm like, okay, I'm not a polygraph examiner right now. I'm telling you, you would be better served to put this stuff down on your application forms to say, I did that bad thing. Now, to a point, obviously. But if you've done something minor in your past, if you've got some minor drug use, most of these organizations have time restrictions on this type of stuff. And they're like, hey, okay, you did marijuana 3 years ago, put it down, no big deal. And you fly through it. Whereas that wasn't the case 20 years ago. So whole person concept, trust the process, and don't try to alter it. Because it'd be like, if you water down your urine trying to beat a urinalysis test, what's the employer going to say? You're hiding something. It's the same thing if you try to mess with the polygraph. So don't try to do that. It's typically not going to go well for you.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you, Brad. At the end, I'd like to, obviously plug whatever you've got going. You've got a book coming out. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, got a book called Tell Me Everything, and was writing a law enforcement book on how detectives and patrolmen, so on and so forth, could increase their communication styles in law enforcement, and was blessed to have an editor, Matt Holt, and his company, and distributed through Simon & Schuster, kind of say, hey, this is a communication book, and kind of broaden it out so parents, teachers, coaches, whatever the case may be, could use it. And I think it really hit on that as far as the life cycle of a conversation. How do we prepare for it? How do we start it? How do we continue it? How do we determine if somebody's not being honest with us? And then if somebody chooses to be dishonest with us, how can we ethically, without hurting a friendship, get them to make that disclosure to us? So that was the nexus of it. And if people want to contact me, bradleybeeler.com is kind of the best way. Or I love the socials, Brad Beeler 1865. That's the year the Secret Service was founded, on Instagram and LinkedIn. Nice. I try to put a lot of content on there as well.
Awesome. And I've had a chance to read an advanced copy of the book, and it's fantastic. It's really, I say, it's really useful for just anyone who, it's great stories from your whole career laced through it, but it's also like practical skills that people can use, whether they're a teacher or a CEO or a parent.
Thank you. That means a lot, Chris. You've been around, you've seen the world. I mean, you've seen it all. So your endorsement means a lot.
No, pleasure, man. Listen, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. It's been such a fun conversation.
Thank you, Chris.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode. A huge thanks again to Brad for sharing his stories with me. And of course, a huge thanks to you all for listening and watching as well. It means a lot to have you guys here each week with us. If you'd like to learn more about Brad, check out the links in the show notes below, or visit his episode page on noordinarymonday.com. You'll also find photos, extras, and everything else from today's episode there as well. All right, so I mentioned at the top of the show about some amazing bonus content from this episode. Later this week, I will post a bonus mini episode where I play a game of 2 truths and a lie with Brad. So hit subscribe now to find out if I can withstand his master interrogation skills. And as always, you can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and you can also join our No Ordinary Monday community on Facebook, where you can jump into the conversation, ask questions, and just generally be a part of the NOM crew. All right, so time for this week's listener story segment. If you'd like your story featured here on the show, head to the website and click the listener story page, or you can just email hello, HELLO, at noordinarymonday.com. All right, so this story is from an anonymous listener, and I'm going to read it out now. I was doing my rounds at a distribution warehouse around midnight. It was a huge place, echoey, dim, endless metal aisles. As I turned a corner, I saw a man standing perfectly still at the far end of the corridor. He was facing the wall. I called out, "Sir, you're not supposed to be here." There was no movement. I got my radio and called it in, and then I started walking closer to the man. The whole time he didn't react. He just stood there absolutely motionless. It was terrifying. My heart was doing gymnastics. When I got close enough, I finally realized it wasn't a man. It was a life-size cardboard cutout from some promotional display. Someone had forgotten to put it back where it belonged. I swear I had lost 2 years of my life that night. When my supervisor found me laughing and swearing on the floor, he just said, "Ah, so you've met Carl." Apparently they'd all been fooled by Carl, the cardboard man, at least once in their time there. That story is absolutely hilarious. I am a big fan of spooky stories, but I think I would genuinely be terrified in that kind of situation. Even though it wasn't real, I think my mind would go to a scary place first. So big respect for the person sending this in, for having the courage to go and check out what might have been a ghost or something else. I probably would have checked the cameras first, but that's just me. Next week, we shift gears into the world of music, but not in the way that you're imagining. My guest is Robert Emery, a world-class conductor, prodigy pianist, and a composer whose career has taken him everywhere from the Sydney Opera House to the Royal Albert Hall to private stages that you and I will never see. And his No Ordinary Monday story is absolutely unbelievable. He was flown by a billionaire to an undisclosed location for a private orchestral performance. And from the moment he arrived, everything spiraled into a surreal, vodka-fueled, opera singer-filled adventure straight out of a Hollywood script. It's chaotic and hilarious, and Robert tells it brilliantly. So hit subscribe and tune in next week for a story that you won't forget. If today's episode made your Monday just a little bit better, please click 5 stars and share the show with someone who would love it. It seems small, but it really does help us. We can grow, we can reach new listeners, and we can keep bringing you these extraordinary guests each week for free. This show is independently produced, hosted, and edited by me, Chris Barron. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great Monday, everyone, and we will see you next week.